Let's start with the zealot. I was reading Sachs, and he says that there's two zealots. There's Pinchas and there's Elijah. Those are the only two. And one of the things that you'll notice is that the two zealots who exercise their zealotry only do it once in a lifetime. This isn't something that they regularly go out and do whenever they get offended. Each of them does it once in his lifetime. And let's take a look at Elijah. Where I want to take you is when he's in the cave. He's flown from Jezebel, who has vowed that she's going to kill him, and he's gone down to Mount Horeb, and he's hiding in a cave. So that's where I want to pick it up. 1 Kings 19:9. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, he being the Lord, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now, depending on what your perspective is on God's omniscience, I think God probably knows why he's there. If for no other reason, because remember at the business with the prophets of Baal, the test was the God who consumes the sacrifice by fire from heaven, he is God. So 40 days before, God had consumed a sacrifice at Elijah's behest. So it is clearly not the case that this is something that God doesn't know what's going on. So the question is rhetorical. What he wants from Elijah is Elijah to tell him something. So God says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very jealous or zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And he said, he, God, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains, and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire the sound of a low whisper, and Elijah heard it. He wrapped his face in his cloak, and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Notice the same question. So verse 14. He said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek to take away my life." Notice it's exactly word for word the same answer as he gave before. Now look at God's response, 15. The Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you will anoint Hazael to be king of Syria, and Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah you shall anoint to be prophet in your place." Which is to say, thank you for your service, we don't need your service anymore. So what's going on here? Elijah's a zealot. When Elijah calls down fire to consume the sacrifice and get rid of the prophets of Baal, God does what he asks him to do. Yet, he's fired. And the key here is in the demonstration of power that God does. So God breaks the rocks and has fire and all that kind of stuff. And in every case it says God was not in them. What facility of God's has Elijah used in his killing of the prophets of Baal? Power. He has called down the power of God, and he has used power of God in getting rid of the prophets of Baal. What God is doing when he's displaying his power and saying that he is not in it. And finally there's this whisper. And that's what talks to Elijah. What he's telling Elijah is, yeah, I've got all the power in the world. I've got all the power outside of the world. There's lots and lots of power available to my prophets. But that isn't the way to operate consistently. What he's trying to get Elijah to recognize is, I don't have to hit everything with the fire of God. I do not have to turn off the rain for 3.5 years. I've got the power to do all that, but at some point it becomes counterproductive. And so what God is saying in this conversation to Elijah is, do you have anything in your toolbox besides a hammer? And Elijah says, no, a hammer's all I've got. And God says, thank you very much for your service. Go anoint Elijah as your replacement. So now let's get Phinehas. So Phinehas takes and frog sticks these two fornicators in front of the tabernacle. And they're doing it right in front of the tent of meeting. And God gives him a covenant of peace. Why a covenant of peace? Peace is what's important here. I do not want you wandering around spearing sinners, especially if you're going to be my high priest. Be at peace. We have been given here on earth capital authority, which is to say, if somebody murders somebody else or kidnaps or any of those kinds of things, it is within our authority from God. Throw them in jail, bring them up, try them, and hang them. We have that authority. What Phinehas is doing is short-circuiting that entire process. Phinehas is saying, I have just made a decision. Those guys are guilty. I'm going to judge them guilty, and I'm going to execute them, and I'm going to do it all on my own recognizance, if you will. There is a space between the crime and the punishment to give people a chance to let their blood settle, calm down, get somebody that's not involved to look at the situation objectively, and then if they deserve to be frog stick them, but not in the heat of the moment. So the idea here is there are circumstances under which zealotry is the appropriate action, but they are very rare. In all of Scripture, there are 2 zealots. 2. And in both cases, God comes to each of those 2 people and says, thank you for your service, don't ever do that again. I think that's what the covenant of peace is.
Shama